templates for the slides of the last one, just kind of like a 4-day split and a 3-day split. And I wanted to go over kind of how I made that, and how to make it, just to kind of simplify programming a little bit. So this was the 3-day, this was the 4-day. So 3 days basically, normally when I run a 3-day, it's just full body, and then for 4 days, like upper lower. Those are kind of like my 2 favorites. 3-day, you know, you can do like, yeah, it's full body. You can also do like push, pull, legs is another common one. And then another way I like to do with 3-day full body is like day 1's like lower body focus, day 2's upper body focus, day 3's full body. So that's just kind of a quick overview on what those are. But starting with the spreadsheet, let's show you kind of like a program. So this is a program I made for golf. So a lot of colors. I like colors and formatting. But basically, what I wanted to bring back from what we were talking about last time is like you started the end point or the goal and or the schedule. So for this client, he's a golfer. So like I was saying, with golfers, they're playing almost year round. So basically, what you see up here is I got his schedule first, and we figured, okay, where are your tournaments at? And then I looked at, okay, where are the biggest cluster of tournaments in a row? So you got like these 4 here, those 3, those 4 there, and then he's got a good stretch of time there, and a little bit of stretch of time here compared to there. So like basically, this is the majority of his competitive seasons. That's really his off season. So that's really his time to really focus on the gym. So it's about 3 months. So then that's why that one's called a preparation block. So that's where we're doing more of our higher volume stuff, more strength, more that volume. Then as we get later into the season, then I kind of parsed out, okay, he's got a few weeks off here, so we'll give that like a little touch up on those things, another little stretch there, we'll touch up on those things again, and then aside from that, we're doing like competitive stuff. And those phases, as you see, are going to be more like power specific, strength specific in the competition area, whereas in preparation, it's going to be more like endurance, hypertrophy, strength, like that. So that's just kind of a look at the spreadsheet, and it doesn't need to be this complicated. This is again for like a pro athlete, or most of your clients are going to get something this crazy. So in terms of how I kind of design exercises, and then as well as going to touch up on some training methods, different types of programs that I alluded to last time. So like we started here on this, there's a few simple moves. I think we all know these. You can see that. The main ones I like to include, just the primary movements. If you were to think squat, hinge, push, pull, kick off. We need single leg. I forgot single leg, push, pull, and then carry or pull, right? So then if we were to split that up, then we can split it up into like, let's say I wanted to do 3 days or 4 days. If it was 3 days, I would just go like day 1, day 2, day 3. And this is basically where it starts. And then you just kind of keep going from there. So that's in part how I came up with that. So then the squat, you can think of how I like to kind of do this is if day 1, if we're doing the full body, right? How I do it is like this one's going to be lower emphasis, upper emphasis, and then full body emphasis. So this day is where I probably put like my back squat. This day is where I'm going to focus on the bench press. And then this day is where I'm going to focus on the deadlift.
Do you focus everything around the big 6?
Around the big 6, but then what like fills in the gaps is based on, are you doing a 3-day, a 4-day, and then where you're at in your program or what you're trying to train for. So another way to look at it, instead of just those big 6, I have the notes here, is this is another way to think about it. So we talked about as well like neural stuff, metabolic stuff, strength, power versus like hypertrophy and endurance. So another way of looking at this is this could just be one workout. Basically, what this is going to touch on is you want to do fast when fresh, then follow that up with strength, and then you finish with like your metabolic stuff or like your hypertrophy and endurance. So then you go like pump. So you can think like the first 2 are like your neural stuff, and then the last 2 are your metabolic stuff. So the set might be exercise 1 is neural, and this is going to be like the power explosive exercise. I spelled that wrong. superset where you do another neural, but this is going to be more strength focused, and it's going to be heavy multi-joint. 2B, neural, heavy multi-joint, and then 3A is where you're going to start getting your metabolic, and then you can turn this into a tricep. 3B, 3C, and then this is going to be like your assistance, isolation stuff, and then it's the same thing repeated. So then we go into sets, reps, like we talked about. So like for power, I spelled that wrong. For power, what were like the sets, reps for that? Just to kind of quiz us from last time.
Like 4 to 6, 5.
All those right in that range. So you know it's anywhere from like, I'll write it up here so you don't have to write the same words. Sets, reps, and rest. So then you're like, okay, we're gonna do our power stuff. You know, you can think jump. Let's do this, move that over. Jump, throw, volley lifts. And then this is gonna be, you know, your compound movements. You know, like squat, bench, deadlift. And then, yep, so it's going to be 3 to 5 sets, up to 6, you know, it depends on the reps, 1 to 5 reps. And then this is going to be the long rest, so like greater than 2 minutes. And then you'll get like your squats and stuff like that. And then for the strength, it was basically the same kind of reps or sets, just like kind of occupies one higher rep, so you can get 1 to 6. And then copy that there. And then for strength, or hypertrophy and stuff, that's what gets like 2 to 4, 6 to 12. And then, you know, around 2 minutes. And then as you go, you can, towards the end, do like an 8 to 12 plus, and then that could be more of your like, endurance kind of big stuff. So that's kind of just the structure or the framework for this, but it all depends again on kind of the program. So what kind of like program would you guys want me to just kind of do as an example? Do a client. 3 days, 4 days, what's the split? 3? 3 days full body. Okay. So, like I said, for full body, my typical approach is to go. Guys, kind of like we just touched on there. Power, and then we'll go power. 1, 2, 3. Power. So for power, with athletes, you know, a lot don't really need like, depending on the sport, like baseball overhead athletes, they don't need like cleans. The catch is the hard part. So I like to use like jumps and ball throws. So that's how I program for a 3-day. Basically, I want them trying to do like jumps and throws at least twice a week. But for 3 days, they can do it every day, especially if they're newer. So basically, how I normally do it is I'll put like a power in like kind of a warm up, and then that's usually like a lighter jump or a heavier or a light med ball. And then I do the opposite in the workout as a contrast set or complex set. So what that means is, you know, after we do our warm up, you know, step 1 is to warm up, do your primer. But then I'll usually include a low intensity plyo and like a low intensity core. And this is part of the warm up before we get to the main lifts. So day 1, like I said, is going to be more lower focus. So I want the jump to be on that day, and then full focus, I want the jump to be on that day. Whereas I want the upper body to be the heavy med ball, right? So then low plyo, here I want this to be like a light med ball. So I'm just going to go like med ball, sutas. And then full body, we're going to do like med ball, overhead slam. Let's call it forward slam. Okay, and then for this day, I want it to be like a lower body plyo because we're going to do the jumps on this day. So then this we could do like single leg vertical hops. And these are more like athlete exercises. Obviously, figure out what's best for your client because not everybody's like ready to start jumping like that. But this is where you start is like single leg small jumps. So then, you know, you can think of a low intensity core. Kind of my core framework for 3 days is I do a low intensity, and then at the end of the workout, I'll do a challenging one. And then how I split it up is on lower days, I like to start with a lateral core, so you can think like side plank. Then for the challenging, I'll go anterior, so you can think like rollouts or hanging knee raises, so right calf rollout. And then on the next day for the upper body day, I like to touch on the anterior again, so you can think, a plank as well as right elbow plank, forward plank. And then this day I like to do rotary, so you can think like landmine rotations or Russian twists. And then the last day, we just need to kind of add a lateral rotary again. So we hit everything 2 times. So this will be an easy rotary, so we'll do a pal-off press. And this will be a challenging lateral where you can think suitcase here. So that's kind of my framework for core, lateral, anterior, anterior, rotary, rotary, lateral. And now you have core already built out for 3 days. You touch on it twice, one earlier in the workout, one later in the workout. And then if you wanted to scale this across time, it's pretty easy because then you can just, if you pull this down, or you can just go like weeks 1 to 4, weeks 5 to 8, weeks 8 to 12, 9 to 12, and then 9 to 12. And then you just write in the variation and you just progress it, and then you have 3 months worth of core work already done, and do that process basically for all your exercises, and it'll be done very quickly. A lot faster than just sitting there and be like, okay, where do I go? And normally, like I said, I like to know, well, where do I want them to end? And I'll write the last one first, and then I'll work my way back in terms of making it easier and easier, so you kind of get the progression from the goal or the end point. Okay. So coming back to this, so then now that we've kind of done that little bit of core, a little bit of plow, we're ready to start getting into the lifts. So there's 2 different frameworks, like the one up here where you start the power first, or if they're not, like that might be if especially if they're doing like Olympic lifts, I would do Olympic lift first. But if they're just doing like the jump, this is where I'll use like a complex, and this is normally the way I do it because it's a little bit more effective for like a 1-hour session when you're with the client. I'll go main lift first, and then I'll do the explosive exercise second. And then that'll be 1A, 1B. That's your superset. So then the main lift on the lower day is we're gonna do, like I said, let's do back squat. And then we'll complement that with the box jump. And then for the upper body day, the main lift for upper is gonna be bench press. And we're gonna complement that with like a med ball chest press. And then the last day is gonna be deadlift, and then we'll complement that with the broad jump. So now you have med ball exercises on 3 days and plyo jump exercises on 3 days. The other key to know with those jumps is, I'm gonna change this one to lateral bounce. So the framework I have for the jump here is this is a vertical jump. Then we have like a lateral or single leg jump. Lateral / single leg. And then we have a horizontal jump. Broad jump. So now you're working all 3 planes of the jumps. Horizontal, broad jump. Okay, and then now we need to get into, let's go 2A, 2B. So since this is full body, on day 1 and 3, we did like kind of a lower first, so then we want to go to, I like to go to upper body next, to kind of give them a little bit of break, both between the upper and lower, but you can also go right back to lower body. But let's say we did that. So this was our main lift for the day, and then this could be main or assistance, but let's just go for the next main lift. So what do you want, so since we have bench, this is like, it's endless, you can do it any way you want, but what do we want our main lift, the upper body to be able to do? What do you guys want?
Upper body.
Yeah, upper body, main lift compound, focusing on strength.
Overhead press.
Overhead press.
So we'll go overhead press. Then we need to think lower body lifts. The other context I want to give for this is the structure I have for these lifts, and I'll simplify this in the table later. Is basically I like to have like a bilateral lower. So that's the back squat. And then we need a single leg or unilateral. Unilateral lower. So then for this, I would normally do some variation of a split squat or a heavier lunge. So I would do like split squats or reverse lunges on this day. Split squat, split squat, and then we'll go gearing and rear foot elevator. And then we need one more upper body lift. So we did the overhead plank and bench press. So this last one, you can go incline, you can do push-ups, kind of depends on the focus for the program, but I'm just gonna go incline press on this one. Okay, so then, this is where it gets, you can, if you didn't do the other explosive up front, you could just put it there, if you don't do that as a warm-up. But since we did that as a warm-up, this is now where, based on the program, you could follow it up with, your another upper exercise, or you could follow it with a lower exercise that complements the main one. I typically go like squat, and then we'll go push-pull, so then I'll go upper posterior. So then on overhead press, vertical, the approach I like to take for posteriors is 2 horizontal to 1 vertical, generally. And then same is 2 push. Ideally, you want to have like 2 push and pull. So that's where later on you can have that. So we'll go 2 pull to 1 push, just to save that for later. Okay. So the main upper posterior for overhead press. This is where I like to go heavier rows or volume rows. So we'll put heavy rows here, volume rows here, and then like pull ups here. Okay, and then the last one, and this is now the 3 ABC. This is where we're kind of getting into more of our hypertrophy work, stuff like that. We already know the core, so that's going to be 3C. So now we just need to choose our assist for lower. Lower posterior. So for this one, I like to write it out as hamstring, glutes, and then like quad or lower back, depending on what they need. So if they have like a weak low back, go that. If they have weak quads, go that. Which that way you always, similar like kind of the 2 horizontal and vertical. Another concept with lower body, and this is for like knee health, is you want to have like 2 ham or glutes. Quad ratio is another good tip. So for the lower posterior, vertical, this is where, since we did squats, this is the day I like to go RDLs. And then for the single leg day, this is where I'll either do the lower back work, or I'll do like some type of hip thrust or glute bridge. And then depending on what they need. So if we did like lower back, I'll move the glute to day 3. But let's say we do glutes here, or let's go ahead and we'll go back extension, we'll go back. And then on this last day, this is where I like to put hip thrusts, because the hip thrust also complements deadlift very well. And then the last one is now we just need the assist for the upper, and this is where I like to do like direct shoulders or upper back. So then for this day, upper assistance. For this day, I like to start with the bench press. So bench press, I like to include another kind of horizontal option. And typically I'll do like face pulls, something that just kind of helps pull the shoulder back after all the pressing. So I'll write face pull here. We can go, let's go for incline press where the lateral is here. And then this day we can just do something simple as like the band pull apart. So we already went heavy with the reps, so that way it's a little bit easier that day. And now you have the whole workout built out. So the framework, like I said, is just kind of you do your warm up, a little primer with like a light jump or med ball, and then a light core, and then you can give them a little bit of that contrast kind of vibe or complex vibe, where we touched on, I think, a little bit of like post-activation potentiation. Basically, it's a fancy phrase for saying when you do something heavy, it primes up those type 2 fibers. So that when you go to the lighter, similar movement pattern, you get more out of that. So if you do a heavy squat, you're going to get more out of box jump afterwards. If you do a heavy bench press, that med ball's going to feel lighter. So you're going to be able to throw it harder. I'm trying to think of another parallel. Like usually what I'll tell my athletes is like in baseball, they have like these weighted balls where you throw like a heavy ball, and then you go back to normal baseball, and it feels like a feather, and it feels like you can throw hard, and you can't actually throw hard. So it's a similar process here. And then I like to do the push-pull, and then just kind of finish up with 3 exercises super quick. So that's kind of the general structure and framework I go when I write programs and workouts. So, like I touched on, it's all periodization. What I said last time is there's people write programs and there's ones called like, they have names, but they all use these principles of like contrast trainings or supersets and stuff like that. So one of the most popular, and this is one for like beginners, to intermediate athletes, it's called the Wendler 531. And basically it just revolves around compounds. That's basically it. So I'll show you guys that one. So the Wendler, so now you can kind of see how strength works. Here. Where'd you go? Wendler 531. Okay, so for the Wendler, basically it revolves around 4 main lifts. So squat, bench, deadlift, and overhead press. And then there's 3 separate phases. There's 4th technically, but basically you do 4 workouts a week, and you're using these almost every single day. The focus for each day though is on one main lift. So you have day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And then we break it down. That's just kind of the structure. Then, like I said, there's 4 cycles, each kind of change. But where the 5-3-1 comes from is the set rep scheme. 5-3-1. So while I'm writing this out, I just want to mention that I look at these, but then I just kind of use it and take information and know for the future. I don't use these programs exactly. I like to have a little flavor and flair to them. But basically, you go week 1 is a 3x5 on the main lift. Week 2 is a 3x3. Week 3 is 3x5, 3, 1. And then week 4 is a deload. Then you just repeat it. And then you just keep doing that over and over. And you do that until they stop seeing numbers improve. And then that's when they're ready to change stuff. But basically, that 5-3-1, that's a weekly 1RM. You're trying to see how much you can lift for that week, and then that sets your reps or your weight for the next cycle. So at the end of every cycle, you're trying to set a new number, and then once you're unable to set a new number, that's when you want to change up programs. So the structure basically is like this. So you do your squat, and then 2 lower body assists. And then that's day 1. And then Tuesday is going to be bench, 2 upper assists.
But you're working at a high percentage still, right? So like
But the intensity has to be high.
Yeah, you're
Well, it's a relative 1RM. So it's not like your maximal overall. It's just what's your ability to do it that day. Like on that given day, how much can you push? Might be 85% of your best 1RM ever. The idea is it's more for a beginner, so for intermediate, so they're not even ready for a true 1RM yet. They're trying to work their way to that.
It's like a beginner powerlifting program.
Exactly. So this is also after like a little bit of hypertrophy work, or you can integrate this where they're just kind of working 5 reps at a lighter weight, and then you're just trying to improve their strength in general. So it's not necessarily they're experiencing a true 1RM. It's just what's the heaviest they can lift for 1 rep that week on the 3rd week, and then you take 80 to 85% of that, and then that sets your tone for the following week, and you just try to build that up and beat that every week.
just recycle back over your stuff. So you go back to week 5, 3x5 at whatever.
Yep. So then we can just do this.
5
Do this.
That's in between sets.
And then we do that.
That's good.
And then it just keeps repeating that. And so that'd be 3 months. So you do that same cycle, and then basically what you're trying to see there is, let's say you're starting at 95, let's say it's 100 pounds. Let's just say you're doing 100 pounds on a squat. Then this week you're trying to go up by about 10 pounds, 5 to 10 pounds. And then on that last rep, you want to try and maybe hit the 5, for 5 reps, hit the 100 again, maybe 105, for the 3, hit the 110 again, maybe 115, and then that lets you know, am I ready for more than 110 on rep 1? If not, just try and hit 110 again for 1 rep, maybe focus on the speed of the rep a little bit more, and that'll feed you next week. But then let's say you hit 5 more for 1, and you hit 115. Now the following week, now you know, okay, well let's start this, 5 pounds up, 105, 115, 120. And then this last week, now you hit 110. And then you're trying to hit 120. And then now you're here, 125.
The first week that you're trying to find that 5 days. So
Exactly.
You're gonna end up doing more, you're probably doing like 6, 7 sets, just to keep working your way up.
Well, yeah, so the 3x5 doesn't include warm-up sets. So I like to add like 2 warm-up sets at least. So basically what you want to think of is like, for warm-up sets, I generally go, what's the rep? If the working weight, so let's say it's the incline rate of working weight. So I was just tell them, start at a lighter weight than what you think you can do, just something you know you can do. Start there and then kind of see where it's at. And then after that, you might just leave the bar. Then I'll go typically around like 70% of the goal weight for the day. So let's say we're trying to get to 100. So we'll do a set at 70% or 70 pounds. And then we'll jump up to like 85%. And then we'll go to our working set. So it'll be like 5 to 8 reps at 70, 5 to 6 reps at 85%. And then now we're ready to hit our 3x5. So the 3x5 is specific to your working sets, not your warm-up sets. So that, yeah, there's going to be more sets, and then that will help gauge it. And then as well, once you get your working sets, if you do your first set 5, like I can do more. The end goal is by that third and final set, you want to be at 5, or your whatever the goal weight you're trying to get to for that day. And that's usually the set I base. The weekly, when I'm tracking, I base kind of usually the last set of what the weight they lifted before I determine where we go forward. So by the last set, they're tired, they have to deload, then that's going to be more, they have to go down in weight by the last set. That's another marker of progress if by the next per week, they're able to stay at 100 for all five reps across 3 sets. So we come back to this, so then after the bench, then we go deadlift, 2 lower body assists, and then we come back to the shoulder press for overhead, and then it's 2 upper body assist. So basically looking at that, that's basically the 3-day program we built out, just spread across the 4 days. And I actually like 4-day splits better. 3 days can hit most people's goals, but personally 4 days is where I like it the most because it maximizes both rest and recovery and then allows you to get the most out of all your lifts. Because if you're doing squat and then overhead's another main lift, you're gonna lose a little bit on that overhead because you're tired from the squat, for example. But as well, is you wanna have about 48 to 72 hours rest between like main lifts. So that's where, there's technically, if we build this out in 5 days, and you thought Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and this is an off day, they have Wednesday off and Thursday off before they do another upper body again. So they get 2 days of rest, so now they're gonna get more out of that overhead. And then it's the same for everything else. And then technically, like squats very hard on the nervous system. So that's why I like to do it first earlier in the week, because then they have Saturday and Sunday are technically off too. So they have 2 full days of rest here. So they're gonna get a lot out of the squat. Then go into the upper body bench, day off. So this is the best split I like in general. And then the Wendler 5-3-1 just kind of shows you the structure. But the Wendler adds more as it goes. So that's going to be like 1 cycle. And then you can add a core at the end of everything. So then you can go core, 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 core. And now you have 4 exercises every day. So then, if we broke it down a little bit more, if you wanted to get, very specific, there's another way to do it. Week 1, week 2, week 3, and then week 4. So Ryan, this might give you a little bit more of your questions. So if we wrote it out, set 1, set 2, set 3. This one you're aiming for about 65% of the highest one rep you've accomplished, 75%, 85%. So like I said, you're trying to go, you can also go up every set. So by that last set, you're at like 85%, which is around like 5 reps, a 5 rep max. Then this week, just add 5% to everything. So you go 70%, 80%, 90%. And then week 3, this is the 5-3-1. So now you're at 75%, which is a little lighter than your heaviest 5, but it's right there. Then you go 85%, and now you're finishing with 95%, just underneath the true 1RM. And and then you deload, just cut it all back, 40%, 50%, 60%. So like I talked about, peak power occurs at 40 to 60%. So this is a week where you can kind of work more on speed, less on weight, and that'll improve your ability to hit the heavier weights next week. So this is kind of like if you wanted to actually periodize each individual set, what that could look like. But then once you finish like a cycle, as it progresses, eventually you're going to add a couple other lifts. So basically what's going to get included over time is going to be a pull-up, is basically the only other thing, and then eventually a hang clean. So the pull-ups will eventually come in on this day, and then those will eventually become cleans. So now putting it all into a plan is if you had month 1, deadlift day, and then month 2, you had deadlift and a pull-up, and then month 3, that deadlift is complemented with a clean, and then you keep the pull-up. So basically, like week 1 would be deadlift, week 2 clean, week 3 deadlift, week 4 clean. Okay, so that's just like the one lift. But like I said, it adds a lot of the principles we talked about, and why I just kind of look at these to get ideas for how should I program and how should I do all of that. Let's see, are there any other good ones? I don't know. Brandon, you asked me about cluster sets one time. We want to talk about those.
Cluster sets can be cut, but sets in half, yeah.
Kind of, yeah. So basically, like let's say you had a goal for 6 reps for that set, you just break it down into sets of 2 with like 15 to 30 seconds of rest in between the sets. So it's good for like if you're not able, you're trying to do weight, you don't know if you can hit that weight for 6 reps continuously. Let's just break it down into sets of 2, and I like to do that more like kind of maximal strength training, especially if they're newer to heavier weights or they're more advanced and they need that kind of style. So you just go 2 heavy reps, sit there for 15 seconds, 2 heavy reps, sit there for 15 seconds, 2 heavy reps.
Those pull-ups, well.
Yeah, then that's another way too, because it allows people to try new weights and new things. Maybe they don't have the ability to do it all in a row, but they're able to get there through just the rest and stuff like that.
The rest has to stay like 10, 15 seconds, or else it just turns into a new set.
Yeah, exactly. Once it gets, well, I'd say up to 30. Once it gets over 30, now you're just starting to get into just a more endurance-based set than like really trying to just keep the body going over the strength. So that's just kind of how I plan it. So if I were to, I'll start here. So this is how, like, if I was going to write a program, I like to standardize my chart. So I'll press Control A, I'll make everything in the middle, and then this is how I know all this. Resize, also have this 25. We'll add a bunch of columns.
What's happening?
Okay, so now we talked about, there's like 4 main phases. Yeah, I just made everything smaller and added more, so it matches that. So it's all those sizes now. So that's all I did.
That's it.
Yeah, I just made it super fast. And then I also like, there's a certain font I like, that's the font because it just fits in a little bit better, it's cooler. So, and then this will be the framework we'll leave on, so then we can build this out next time. So let's come up like, you said 3-day split, what's kind of the goal for the program? Like, what's the client? What do they want to do? What's the end goal? Give me an example.
Pull-ups and improve his posture.
Okay. Pull-ups,
And his low back pain. There you go.
posture.
Pull-ups, posture, and low back issues.
Okay, and what's his time limit?
A year. He just turned 49.
One year.
If you jack that times 50.
Okay, and he wants to be, how many pull-ups does he want to do by the end of the year?
Say 10. I don't know, kind of just
Pull-ups.
creating the avatar too.
And what's like the postural issue? Is it like
He slouches a lot.
forward cross and slouching? Okay, so he wants to stand up straighter.
Correct.
And then low back, like,
He always throws it out some way, doing something.
herniated discs or anything like that?
He hasn't gotten any scamp probably. You know what I mean? It'll get out of whack, and he'll get like an imbalance for a few weeks, and then we kind No, he goes and sees Hatfield now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Okay. So then, now, this. So now we need 52 weeks. So if you write a few, there's a little tip, so you don't try to 52 in a row. If you go to this little bottom corner, that little blue thing, it turns into a square or a little cross, and you just click it and drag. And now we have 52 weeks. Okay, and then we can separate those into months. I can just shortcut a little bit faster for you. So if I go here, and then I go over here. Oh, that's what we're
She said my resume says I can do that. It's like I'm not Joey. Those special skills I have, I really like to be able to do one of those.
There you go, that's from this summer, like June, all the way to next June. So I have all the dates, so basically this is just the training week, that's the month, and then that's the day, it starts on Monday, so that's every Monday, the actual date. And then we can, when's he want this, like, is this?
He just turned, yeah, I mean,
Let's
I
swap
mean, half of
dates,
it,
right?
like, he was trying to
Yeah,
create the
so
avatar
now
with you, but
Now I need,
it's basically a year,
okay,
51 months, 51 weeks. It was his
Okay.
birthday last week.
so then I'll just take this, and then we'll go like this, like this, like this, and then there's 4 weeks left over. So basically what I'll do is, I can separate, I can add like an extra 4 week at the end, or I can just, I'll just make 13-week blocks, so I'll just put like a gap week for like testing in between everything. Because like, he's not like an athlete or anything like
No.
that, it's like an athlete. So now you have a 13th week for testing in between everything already ready to go. And now you have 4 weeks, so then like we talked about, we want to finish with like power peak stuff. The next step back is going to be like match strength. The next step back is going to be like, basic strength, hypertrophy. And then the next step back from that is going to be like your foundational stuff. Your GPP, endurance, stuff like that. And this is going to be like strength, hypertrophy, and stuff like that. And then now we kind of have that, and then you just keep working back. So now we have like the mesocycle set up. And now we separate those, but I like to separate those into 4 week sections. So we'll just take 4 weeks, and then you just do that, and then you hit that, and do that, and that, and that. And then we can go, okay, we're gonna start foundational stuff. I like to do like tempo training, so we can go like eccentric focus, isometric focus, stuff like that, and you keep building out. And you keep working down and down. So this is, if you guys want to keep doing this, we can keep continuing with this next time, or if you guys want to go back to the slides, I can move on to the next week with more slides. We want to keep building this out, and building this out next week. And then now you guys can see kind of like the organization. I just wanted to follow up with the structure of how I build those slides at the end, so if you go look at it, you kind of get a little bit more idea. And then I can add like all my different formulas of like core, how to start core, single core, glute hamstring, posterior chain, all that stuff. But this is basically how you do this. I'm just going to standardize a little bit more. Okay, and then the 3 week blocks, that. Okay. Second.
Yeah, cool.
And this way too, Martin, at least you can see how I do Excel stuff really fast.
It's fucking wild. I mean,
If you can do Paul's, yeah, if you can do Paul's program for the next 2 months longer.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
then
a whole year here.
if you want to create another avatar for someone named Joyce, that'd be great. And then I have a, yes, whatever you want to do, just let me
Just check
know.
it, and then you can just check it when you want to.
Okay.
No,
It'll be a monthly fee.
No, that's good, thank you.
Yeah, and then like I said, you just build it out and then kind of, what do you want each, and then you just break it down into individual, like 1 to 2 week microcycles, and then you start setting up your set reps. So that's how this eventually becomes starts there. You see how like I broke it down. It's a little bit more specific for your clients. It's like you just go 4, 4, 4. And then you get down here, like you can see some of the lender stuff, like 5, 3, 1, 1 to 5, all that. So like this tells me all the sets, reps, yeah, and that just tells me we're doing all of it at once, but that just tells me what's kind of the focal point, and then that way we're like, okay, after week off, we want to get back into some light stuff. They're in strength, they're in power, they're in deload, light some strength, power, deload, light some strength, power, deload. You know? That way it's just easier to see.
That's the whole Lego.
Bye.